Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Today I am testing the newest member of the BMW car family. This is right beside me, a 2020 M235i Gran Coupe. Now, as you guys know, the 2 Series is the entry-level car in BMW's North American lineup. It's always been offered as a coupe and a convertible, and this 4-door version is the newest member of the family for 2020. Now, this one here isn't just any regular 2 Series Gran Coupe, it's the M235i, which means it has the most powerful production 4-cylinder ever offered on a modern BMW, making 301 horsepower, 332 pound-feet of torque. Now, unlike its other 2 Series siblings, this is actually a front drive chassis. It shares an architecture with the Mini UKL platform. So, you know, that Mini Countryman SUV, that's right, BMW has disguised this Mini platform as a sports sedan. Now in this video, we're gonna drive the M235i, we're gonna go over the interior, go over the styling, and at the end of the video, I'm gonna find out, is this M235i an actual BMW sports sedan, or is it just a Mini disguised as a BMW? Stay tuned to find out. Now, when you see a BMW with an M badge, that usually means it stands for motor. So I thought I'd pop the hood and show you guys what's powering this M235i. Now, you guys are probably pretty familiar with this engine. I've shown you guys this powertrain in some Mini Cooper, John Cooper Works models, and of course an X2 M35i. And in the M235i Gran Coupe, it's making the same power. It's a 2-liter turbocharged direct injection 4-cylinder, of course, with their double Vanos variable valve timing technology. It makes 301 horsepower and 332 pound-feet of torque. Those numbers are pretty impressive, and it puts this car right in line, of course, with a Mercedes-AMG CLA 35, an Audi S3, Cadillac's CT4V, which I just tested a couple weeks ago. And what the lovely thing about the 2 Series Gran Coupe here in America is it comes standard with the company's xDrive all-wheel drive system, so there is no front drive model, although you can tell underneath the hood that this is a front drive platform because the engine, blasphemy, is mounted transversely. Most other BMWs have a longitudinally mounted engine because they are rear-wheel drive platforms. Now, because this thing comes standard with all-wheel drive, it does weigh a little bit more than a standard 2 Series. It weighs in at around 3,600 pounds, so not really any heavier than most of its competitors, but BMW says with the all-wheel drive, with the standard 8-speed ZF automatic transmission, there's no manual available. This car with launch control should get to 60 in around 4.6 seconds, which does give it pretty impressive performance. Now, because this is a 4-cylinder, it's rated to get pretty decent MPG figures, 23 in the city, 32 on the highway. Premium gas, of course, is required when you have the M Performance version. There's also a 228i that has the same 2-liter turbo that makes around 228 horsepower, but of course, that's a different review. Overall, with the standard 8-speed automatic, this should provide very good performance, especially for those of you who are looking for an entry-level BMW sports sedan. So now that we're looking past what's underneath the hood, I want to talk about the styling of the M235i Gran Coupe, or the 2 Series Gran Coupe. And I have to say, this car definitely has some nice proportions to it. However, there are certain times where I'm looking at this car and it really just looks like a Corolla or a Kia from 5-10 years ago. It has slightly odd proportions from other angles, but then of course, when you look at it from different angles, it does have the classic BMW styling elements that we expect. Now, looking at the front fascia, the one thing I really appreciate is the fact that BMW didn't put that massive nostril that you find on the new 4 Series. From this angle, it actually has some pretty nice lines. My tester, of course, comes with the standard BMW LED, full LED headlights with the LED daytime running lights and turn signals. You can see the grille has painted this kind of smoke look to it, along with some of the trim in the front fascia. A lot of the openings that you see are actually functional, which is nice. Remember, when you have an M235i model, it's not a full-on M2 like you can get on the Coupe, of course, but this model here is designed to kind of be a middle ground between a full-on M version and a M-fied 2 Series. But as you can see here, the Gran Coupe model from the front fascia looks good, but when I step back here and look at the rest of the proportions, I don't like the way this car looks. It looks like it sits up very high. You can tell it has kind of crossover roots to it when you look at it from this angle here. At 178 inches long, of course, this is longer than the Coupe and the convertible, but it is about 8 inches shorter than the Cadillac CT4V that I last tested a couple of weeks ago. You can see the wheels. I really like the wheels on the M235i. It has 235/35 19-inch wheels with the M Sport brakes with the blue calipers. They are a 4-piston Brembo design to them, and the wheels, I think, are probably the best part about this car. This is probably my favorite wheel in this particular segment of subcompact sedans. Now, of course, you can see, looking at the rest of the proportions, the Gran Coupe model, of course, is a 4-door, but BMW calls this kind of a coupified four-door, although it doesn't have the same beautiful proportions that you get from an 8 Series. You can see my tester is missing the panoramic roof option, which this one would benefit from having, because it would make the roof panel darker, which would make it look a little bit lower. The rear of the car is probably the worst angle for me. I don't love these tail lights and the overall design. I do like the tasteful rear lip spoiler. It has an M235i badge, an xDrive badge, and then down here you can see the exhaust system. It's got dual outlet exhaust with those smoked tips, which does have a nice sound to it. It actually sounds better to me than the last CLA 35 and S3 that I tested. But overall, let me know what you think in the comments below of the styling. In this white exterior, the wheels look nice, and from the front fascia it looks good, but from the rear here, it just looks like I'm staring at a crossover SUV. Now, opening up the trunk area, you can see BMW says you get around 15.1 cubic feet of trunk space, which is actually pretty decent. This is about 5 more cubic feet than you find in the Audi and in the Mercedes. The seats, as you can see, fold down in like a 40-20-40 split manner, which is nice. And then underneath here, there's a little bit of storage, which is really nice. A little bit more storage on the side. So the trunk capacity is actually pretty good, although I wish BMW had made this a liftback as opposed to a standard traditional sedan. So once you look past the exterior of the 2 Series Gran Coupe and look at the interior, you'll notice that BMW went to great lengths to make sure that you have no idea that this is based off of a mini platform, because this interior is basically all BMW, especially if you've been in a lot of the modern BMWs. As you can see, my tester has a really nice color combination of the black two-tone with the carbon fiber looking fake trim, and I love these orange seats with the orange trim that you find splashed throughout, of course, the door panels. These seats, of course, are specific to the M235i. They're a lot more aggressively bolstered. They're like a 12-way power on both sides. You have this nice thigh extender over here, of course. The seats are fantastic. It looks great with the mineral white metallic exterior with these orange seats. Now, when I shut the door, sadly, the door doesn't sound quite as solid as I'd like it to, because these are a pillarless, frameless door. But I guess I can't complain too much. This is supposed to be their entry-level model. Now, here's the key fob for the vehicle. It's the standard BMW key. They also offer the digital key where you can use, I believe, a key card like a lot of Teslas, which of course my tester didn't come with that, so I just have this standard key fob. The button to start the engine is down here. And remember, there was a time in the past where M235i meant it had a 3-cylinder turbocharged 4-cylinder. Nowadays, this means we have a high output 4-cylinder instead of a 6-cylinder. I'm sorry, I said 4-cylinder earlier, but it does make a pretty decent noise. Sadly, there's a pretty low rev limiter, but from outside I noticed the exhaust is a little bit more noticeable, but it just has that typical 4-cylinder drone, but every other vehicle in this segment kind of has a similar noise to it. Now, looking at the rest of this interior, you can see the door panel has a slightly soft touch injection molded plastic. You have aluminum trim here for the door handles. You have some fake carbon fiber looking trim here. The speakers, of course, these are plastic speakers, which kind of looks a little bit cheap. My tester doesn't have the upgraded Harman Kardon stereo system. And then down here, the door panels are hard touch plastic, but there's a lot of storage down here. It's nice and padded, of course, right here where your elbows would rest, which is nice. The steering wheel is a manual tilt and telescoping design. It offers a really nice amount of adjustability. I like the way the wheel looks. It's got a very thick rim, no flat bottom design, but this is specific to the M235i model. It's got these paddle shifters that are mounted to the wheel. They are just a plastic look to the paddle shifters. And then, of course, over here, the center stack isn't really different from every other BMW product that I've seen. This right here is a soft touch injection molded plastic with a fake stitching. This is soft touch over here as well. What I don't like is this material here over the instrument panel hood. It looks like it came out of a Mini or just a really cheap car. It just feels flimsy and looks flimsy. It doesn't look like it belongs in a BMW, so that's gonna kind of remind you that this is a cheap interior, although the design is very classic BMW. You have a lot of your controls over here with your presets. You have a tuning button over there, of volume knob. Right there, you have dual zone automatic climate control, which is nice. This screen kind of shows you what the temperature's at. My tester is frustratingly missing heated seats. That's an a la carte option. And at $50,000, that is inexcusable because it has a heated steering wheel. So I don't really understand why it has a heated steering wheel, but no heated seats. No cooled seats are available, of course, on this model. It's not even available on a 3 Series, if I remember correctly. There's a wireless phone charger down here. which is nice. And then down here as well, you can see there's USB cup holders, and then this controls the 8-speed ZF automatic. When I put the car into reverse, there is a backup camera there, of course, without the top-down 360 view, but it does give you a pretty decent view. No forward camera, but you do have front and rear parking sensors, which is nice. This is iDrive. This is iDrive 7.0, which does have wireless Android Auto and CarPlay. You can see when I pull up the CarPlay, this is a touchscreen as well, and you can kind of just pull this up. And it looks pretty good. This screen here is 10.25 inches. This screen is also 10.25 inches. They combine to make it look like a very modern, classic BMW interior, which I really like. You can also control it from the iDrive controller, which iDrive has really been improved over the years. It's one of the best in the business. You have your different drive modes here, of course. You have your stability control off switch. There's Eco, Comfort, and Eco Pro, and Sport, of course, where you can kind of customize the individual look if you guys would like to. So the rev limiter actually goes away once the car has been idling for a little bit, and there you can hear some of the burbles and pops from the exhaust. So I do find the engine sounds okay from the exhaust part, but it revs up like a typical 4-cylinder. There's a nice center console storage area here with a good amount of storage. It's nice and deep. This is padded, of course, right here. The glove compartment, you can see, is damped and lined with felt. It actually is pretty deep, so I'm pretty happy about that. And I also like these seats. Like I mentioned earlier, they're comfortable and supportive. You also have all LED lighting throughout the cabin. So overall, this interior is about what I expected from an entry-level BMW, although there is some cheapness to the interior, but it is full of a lot of features, just as long as you're able to pay extra for them. The heads-up display is also extra, although it does add a nice high-tech touch to it. Now this is the only 2 Series that actually has 4 doors, although it's a completely different animal, but as you can see here, the back seat space isn't what I would call spacious. The opening isn't the largest. The doors don't open up very big, so you actually have to put car seats back here, or tall adults. You may find the quarters to be a little bit cramped. But at 5'7" getting back here, I really have to duck my head to get back here, which is kind of a problem, because remember, this is a swoopy 4-door coupe styling. But once I'm back here and I've set myself into these seats, it actually isn't too bad. BMW says you get around 36 inches of legroom back here, which isn't too hateful, although these seats, you can see they do take up a good amount of your knee space. There is a hump here that intrudes, but you do have rear seat air vents and 2 USB charging ports. When I shut the door, the doors don't have a really solid thunk. It's kind of similar to the front, although these materials here, they're slightly soft touch padded, but they feel a little bit cheap and flimsy. Remember, this is supposed to be their entry-level model. I see 2 mat pockets here in the seat back, which is nice. The seats themselves have an armrest here that folds down that gives you 2 cup holders. But as I said before, 3 across would be tight. There are no heated rear seats, but at least there are rear seat vents and 2 USB ports. So the last front drive BMW that I drove was the X2 M235i, which is such a mouthful. I'm probably butchering the name of this car and the X2 so many times. I actually was pretty impressed with that car because it felt like a hot hatch, because that was more of an SUV. However, the 2 Series Gran Coupe, same car, but it's supposed to feel more like a sports sedan, which sports sedans, as you guys know, they're tough to build, although BMW is great at building sports sedans. All-wheel drive, like I said, is standard equipment. I have it in sport right now, traction controls and traction sport mode. Good noise. I like the pops and crackles from the exhaust, although it could be a little louder. The engine itself doesn't quite have the character that I expect from other BMWs, although the last X2 with this powertrain I drove was a little bit more enthusiastic, so I'm a little surprised that this car feels a little bit more muted. Maybe it's the fact that it's a sedan, it's supposed to be lower to the ground. I'm just feeling slightly disappointed. Now, I do want to test out this car's launch control, which is activated when the car is in sport traction mode right here. All you have to do is just floor the brake with the throttle all the way to the floor. Very nice. 4.6 seconds is what BMW claims. It feels about right. This is one quick accelerating car. If you guys go for the 228i Gran Coupe, it'll actually do 0 to 60 in around 6.5 seconds. So this shaves nearly 2 seconds off that performance. And the noise is very augmented, but there is a slight pop and crackle from the exhaust. I mean, compared to the Cadillac CT4V that I drove, the powertrain is a little bit more enthusiastic in this car. It has a slightly better noise. The transmission is that 8-speed torque converter automatic. It feels fine. The car itself drives pretty well. I'm not really complaining too much about how it drives. What I am going to complain about, however, is the chassis of this car. It feels like I'm driving an SUV that's been lowered. It doesn't have the balanced feel of a BMW. The front feels slightly nose heavy. It feels like it's going to push a little bit if I really start pushing it as well. The steering doesn't have the typical feedback I associate with even like the modern BMWs with their electric power steering assist. There's just something about this car that feels off to me. It looks off from certain angles, and when you're driving the car, it feels off from certain parts of when you're really pushing the car. I mean, driving it normally, the X2, or the, I confused it for an X2, the M235i Gran Coupe, makes me think like I'm driving like an SUV. It's a very strange feeling at times, but it's still a nice driving car for sure. The transmission is responsive and smooth. When I put my foot to the floor, it's pretty quick to downshift as well. The noise is fine. The visibility in here is pretty good. It's got all the driver assistance I expect from modern BMWs, although it is optional. Keep that in mind. But compared to the CLA 35 and Audi S3, the Cadillac CT4, I expect BMWs to have the best driving dynamics, and this one definitely doesn't, which is a huge shocker if you guys are coming from a 3 Series, or if you're a BMW fan. This is, if you've never driven a sports sedan, this is going to feel sporty and well-planted and quick and fun, which it still is. However, if you've driven, you're coming from like a 3 Series from a couple years ago, this is going to feel odd at times. It's a very strange driving sedan that is practically disguised as an SUV. Now, in terms of the fuel economy, I've had this car for a week and it's averaging around 25 miles to the gallon, so that's the good thing about it being a 4-cylinder. It's not terribly heavy, but there's just something about this car that also doesn't feel quite as special or remarkable as BMWs of the past. So it is a very strange car. I actually might say that I'd recommend the SUV version. The X2 M35i is probably the better all-around car because you get more cargo space, you get better practicality. That car, to me, felt like a hot hatch that, you know, has been jacked up slightly to be like an SUV, versus this feels like a SUV that's been lowered to feel like a sedan with odd proportions. I think the X2 actually looks better. So it's a very interesting dynamic that this car gives you. But I'd say probably go for the X2. The Gran Coupe is different. And if you guys want an entry-level BMW sedan, the M235i should probably, you know, make you happy. But I would also continue to check out its competitors, and don't forget a new Audi S3 A3 is going to come out in the next year or so. So the 2 Series Gran Coupe is definitely a nice addition to the 2 Series family, especially if you guys have always wanted a 2 Series but needed the space and practicality that 2 extra doors gives you. Unfortunately, if you guys are expecting this to drive like the typical rear drive BMW sports sedan, you're going to be pretty disappointed because it constantly reminds you that this is a front drive architecture. In fact, I'm going to go out on a limb here and just say get the X2 because it's way more practical. It feels like a hot hatch. It has the same powertrain as this car, and especially from this angle, I think the X2 actually looks a lot better versus the 2 Series Gran Coupe. This engine does sound pretty good. It's quick enough. It handles fine, but it has the front drive understeer that you typically get with a front drive platform, and the xDrive all-wheel drive is nice that it comes standard, but really it's going to come, of course, at a price because the 2 Series Gran Coupe starts at around $37,500 for the 228i. Add about $8,000 for the M235i version of this car, which starts at around $45,000. My tester, of course, has a premium package for $2,600. The 19-inch wheels, which are extra for like another $750. The M Sport wheel is an extra $700 as well. All in, my tester stickers for $50,250, which is pretty expensive. It's actually a little bit less expensive than the last CLA 35 that I drove, but I argue that the BMW or the Mercedes looks better on the outside and on the inside. It's a little bit more interesting as well to drive versus the BMW. You could also, of course, wait for the Audi S3, the new version that's coming, or get the old one and save money. I do like this car more than the Cadillac CT4V. I think the overall package is nicer, although the Cadillac is the handling champ because it's a rear drive platform. Really, this class in general is a strange class to actually purchase a vehicle in. I would just honestly just spend a little bit more or spend the same and get a class above this car, which would be a standard 3 Series model, as opposed to this M235i, or again, just get that X2. But with all that said, I hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on this 2020 M235i Gran Coupe. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.